Welcome to the Windy City Breeze's Top 10 Chicago Bears quarterbacks. Finding a quarterback is very hard in the NFL. It's a position that only a few in the world can play. Not every franchise has had success having one, if not many, over the course of the league, unlike the team up north, which has had stability for the last 30 years. With that being said, the Bears have went through a number of quarterbacks. Since 1985, there have been 16 starting quarterbacks and many fill-ins. There are multiple factors for a quarterback to be successful: talent, offensive scheme, coaching, offensive line, defense. So when compiling this list and ranking our QBs, those factors came into play. In honor of Justin Fields becoming the 17th starting quarterback since 1985, we are hoping he's able to have a long career with the Bears. And we are certain he will make this list shortly, if not hopefully finish among the top of the list. With that being said, we kick off the countdown with our number 10 Chicago Bears quarterbacks.
Number 10.
Number 10, Jim Miller. Jim Miller was a free agent signing in 1999. He was signed to replace Eric Kramer, who was lost to injury. Miller played 2 years in Pittsburgh before signing with the Bears. He played 3 years and played in 32 games. It was a short stint derailed by injuries. He quarterbacked the Dick Duran team that went 13-3 in 2001 and came up short against Philly in the divisional round. A hard slam from Hugh Douglas knocked him out of the game and the Bears out of the playoffs. The injuries caught up to him and he was cut in 2002. His best year was the 2001 season, where he threw for 2,299 yards with 13 touchdowns and 10 interceptions on 58% completion. In total, he compiled a 15-11 record, throwing for 5,867 yards with 34 touchdowns and 26 interceptions on 58% completion. He is 16th on the Bears' all-time passing list.
Number 9.
Number 9, Ed Brown. Ed Brown was the Bears' quarterback from 1954 to 1961. Brown had pretty good teams. They lost the championship game in 1956 and had a pair of second-place finishes in the standings where he was the quarterback. Ed Brown was an MVP and a two-time Pro Bowler. His best season was the 1956 season, which in fact he was the MVP of the league. He threw for 1,667 yards with 11 touchdowns and 12 interceptions on 57% completion. In total, Ed Brown threw for 9,698 yards with 63 touchdowns and 88 interceptions. He played in 98 games and compiled a 39-25-2 record. He is 8th on the Bears' all-time passing list.
Number 8.
Number 8, Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh, hailing from Michigan, was drafted in the first round, the 26th pick in the 1987 draft. He was on the Bears from 1987 to 1993. He played a reserve role for the start of his career. He didn't become the starter until 1990. In that season, he played 14 games and the Bears went 11-5. He threw for 2,178 yards with 10 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He injured his shoulder and sat the last 2 games and the playoffs that year. In 1991, he became the first Bears quarterback to start in 16 games since Vince Evans in the 1970s. The Bears finished 11-5 that year, but lost in the wild card round against Dallas. The last 2 years of his career, the team regressed. He left the Bears in 1994 and signed with the Colts. In total with the Bears, he played in 89 games and compiled a 35-30 record. He threw for 11,567 yards with 50 touchdowns and 56 interceptions on 58% completion. He is 3rd on the Bears' all-time passing list.
Number 7.
Number 7, Eric Kramer. Eric Kramer was a prize free agent signing in 1994. The former Lions quarterback came heralded, as the Bears were totally over the 1985 era. He played 49 games from 1994 to 1998. Unfortunately for Kramer, he wasn't able to overcome the woes of the supporting cast. Marred by injuries and the offensive line challenges, Kramer did not have the success everyone hoped for when he signed here. He played 2 full seasons as a starter in 1995 and 1997. His best season was the 1995 season, where the Bears went 9-7. He holds the Bears' single-season record for passing yards at 3,838 yards and touchdowns 29 and attempts in a single game with 60. He left in 1998 and played for San Diego in 1999, but retired midseason due to neck injury. He compiled a record of 18-28, throwing for 10,582 yards with 63 touchdowns and 45 interceptions on 58% completion. He is 6th on the Bears' all-time passing list.
Number 6.
Number 6, Rex Grossman. Rex Grossman was drafted 22nd overall in the 2003 draft. He had the promise coming out of Florida. After 2 season-ending injuries to start off his career, he finally appeared to take off in the 3rd season in 2006.
Rex Grossman was September's Offensive Player of the Month.
But he had a sporadic year, leading the Bears to the Super Bowl that year. That season, his best season, Grossman threw for 3,193 yards with 23 touchdowns and 20 interceptions with 54% completion. Unfortunately, that was his best year. Grossman was released in 2008. He is one of the few quarterbacks to help win in the playoffs and make it to the Super Bowl. He played in 36 games from 2003 to 2008. Grossman compiled a 19-12 record, throwing for 6,164 yards with 33 touchdowns and 35 interceptions. He is 14th on the Bears' all-time passing list.
Number 5.
Number 5, Mitchell Trubisky. Mitchell Trubisky was drafted with the 2nd pick in the 2017 draft. He played for 3 years. He was supposed to sit his rookie year and develop, but was pressed into action early. Mitch showed flashes of potential with his athleticism, but coaching changes and different OCs plagued him. He quarterbacked a good team that made it to the 2018 playoffs. His best season was the 2018 season, where he threw for 3,223 yards with 24 touchdowns and 12 interceptions with a 66% completion percentage and a QBR of 95.4. Trubisky became the first Bears quarterback selected to the Pro Bowl, the first since 1985. Trubisky's total career did not seem to impress the front office enough to extend his contract, and he was released after the 2020 season, where he signed with Buffalo as a backup, and is currently a backup for Pittsburgh. In total, Trubisky played 51 games with a 29-21 record. He threw for 10,609 yards with 64 touchdowns and 37 interceptions, with a career rating of 87.2. He has the best QBR rating of all the Bears. He is 5th on the Bears' all-time passing list.
Number 4.
Number 4, Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler arrived to Hallis Hall in 2009 via trade with the Denver Broncos. He was drafted 11th overall in the 2006 draft. Cutler came with some fanfare as a young Pro Bowler who threw for 4,526 yards his last year in Denver. Cutler's tenure is the longest of the Bears quarterbacks. He played with the Bears from 2009 to 2016. His best year was the 2010 season, where the Bears were 11-5 and made it to the playoffs, but lost in the conference championship to the team up north. Cutler threw for 3,274 yards with 23 touchdowns and 16 interceptions, with a 60% completion and an 86.3 QBR. The Bears finished 10-6 in 2012, but didn't make the playoffs and the team regressed. Cutler was released after the 2016 season and played 1 year in Miami and retired afterwards. In total, Cutler played 102 games, posted a 51-51 record. He threw for 23,443 yards, with 154 touchdowns and 109 interceptions, with a 61% completion percentage and an 85.2 QBR. He is 1st on the Bears' all-time passing list.
Number 3.
Number 3, Billy Wade. Billy Wade was a 7-year veteran when he came to the Bears. He was the former number 1 pick in the 1952 draft. He played all 7 seasons with the Rams. He then asked to be traded to the Bears. He took over for Ed Brown in 1961. He played for the Bears from 1961 through 1966. He quarterbacked the team that won the Bears their first championship in 1963, when the Bears went 11-1-2. He threw for 2,301 yards, with 15 touchdowns and 12 interceptions that year. One of his best seasons was the 1962 year, where he threw for 3,172 yards. He threw for 18 touchdowns, but with 24 interceptions. He led the league in pass completions and attempts. He is one of the few Bears to throw for over 3,000 yards. He made the Pro Bowl in 1963. In total, Billy Wade played in 59 games with a 27-20-2 record. He threw for 9,958 yards with 68 touchdowns and 66 interceptions. He is 7th on the Bears' all-time passing list.
Number 2.
Number 2, Jim McMahon. Jim McMahon was drafted 5th overall in the 1982 draft. He was a charismatic, punky QB from the minute he stepped out of the limousine. McMahon had a 6-year career with the Bears from 1982 to 1988. He had a penchant for calling audibles against the chagrin of Coach Ditka, but would ultimately be successful. McMahon was the NFC Rookie of the Year in 1982. He played with no regard for his body, which resulted in many injury-marred seasons. He quarterbacked the Bears to their first Super Bowl in 1985 since 1963, perhaps playing a part in one of the greatest seasons and greatest teams of all time. In the 85 year, he threw for 2,392 yards with 15 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, with a 56.9% completion percentage. He never threw for over 3,000 yards in a season. A cheap shot in Week 12 in 1986 forever changed the trajectory of McMahon, where injuries cut short the greatness of the 80s Bears. Despite the injuries, he won 22 consecutive regular season games, a feat which wasn't broken until Peyton Manning was 23. With McMahon eventually playing, the Bears had great records: 10-6 in 84, 15-1 in 85, 14-2 in 86, 11-4 in 87, and 12-4 in 88. After falling out with the front office and the coach, he was traded to the San Diego Chargers. In total, McMahon played in 66 games, posting a 46-15 record. He threw for 11,203 yards, with 67 touchdowns and 56 interceptions, with a 58% completion percentage, with a career 80.4 QBR. He is 4th on the Bears' all-time passing list.
Number 1.
Number 1, Sid Luckman. Sid Luckman was drafted number 2 overall by Pittsburgh and then traded to the Bears in 1939. He pioneered a new version of the T formation. George Halas designed the system for his skill set, and Luckman took off. Luckman was a winner, and he put up numbers in the 40s. In 1943, Luckman completed 110 of 202 passes for 2,194 yards and 28 touchdowns with 12 interceptions. His 13.9% touchdown rate that year is the best ever in a single season, while his 10.9 yards per attempt is second all time. During one game that year, Luckman threw for 443 yards and 7 touchdowns, still tied for the most passing touchdowns in one game. It was also the first 400-yard passing game in NFL history. His 28 touchdown passes in 1943, in only 10 games, was a record that lasted until 1959, a 12-game season. Luckman led the NFL in yards per attempt, an NFL record 7 times, including 5 consecutive years from 1939 to 1943, and led the NFL in passing yards 3 times. Luckman was a 5-time All-NFL selection, was named the National Football League's Most Valuable Player Award in 1943, and led the Monsters of the Midway to championships in 1940, 1941, 1943, and 1946. Despite the fact that his career ended in 1950, Luckman still owns several Bears passing records. Luckman was very decorated as a player, also including a 5-time first-team All-Pro, 1941 through 44 and 1947, 3-time NFL All-Star, 3-time NFL passing yard leader, 3-time passing touchdown leader, 3-time NFL passer rating leader, NFL completion percentage leader. In total, Luckman threw for 14,686 yards, 147 touchdowns, and 132 interceptions on 52% completion. He is second on the Bears' all-time passing list.